Sit back and enjoy 2 hours of fascinating facts you didn't know. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. Let's get started. The Statue of Liberty stands beside a broken chain and shackle hidden beneath her robes to symbolize the abolition of slavery. The chocolate company Mars named the Snickers bar after the family's favorite horse. The candy bar was launched during the 1930s and quickly became one of the company's most successful products. The bar combines chocolate, caramel, peanuts, and nougat, a mixture that helped distinguish it from other sweets of the era. According to Heinrich Frank, a professor at the Federal University of Rio Grande do Sul, prehistoric giant sloths in South America dug hundreds of miles of tunnels that still exist today. If you ever tragically lose a finger and there is no doctor available, it is actually possible to have one of your toes transplanted to replace it. The procedure is called a toe-to-hand transplant. This specialized surgery began developing more successfully during the 20th century thanks to advances in microsurgery, allowing surgeons to reconnect extremely small blood vessels, nerves, and tendons. In many cases, doctors usually use the second toe because it can better adapt to the function and appearance of the hand without greatly affecting the ability to walk. In 2009, a 28-year-old Russian man named Sergei Tuganov accepted a bet worth 3,000 pounds from two women who claimed he could not have sex with them for 12 consecutive hours. One bottle of Viagra later, he collected his 3,000 pounds and then dropped dead from a heart attack. Looking to add some variety to its diet, an orca at Marineland in Niagara Falls, Ontario, Canada, learned to regurgitate fish in order to lure seagulls to the surface of the pool. It then catches the birds and, after witnessing this behavior, 4 other whales began imitating it. When automated teller machines were first introduced, many people believed they would be a complete failure because only prostitutes and gamblers would want to conduct their banking transactions without looking a teller in the eye. The Brooklyn Bridge in New York, which was completed in 1883, actually predates London's Tower Bridge by 11 years, since the latter was not completed until 1894. Many animal species experience something called the Coolidge effect, named after United States President Calvin Coolidge. This biological anomaly occurs when a new female is introduced into a group and the male shows renewed interest. This can also happen immediately after the male has finished mating with a previous partner who is still available. Ears of corn always have an even number of rows. This is because corn spikelets always grow in pairs. Most ears usually contain between 12 and 20 perfectly aligned rows, although the amount can vary depending on the cultivated variety and soil conditions. For thousands of years, corn has been one of the most important crops in the Americas and is currently used to produce food, flour, oils, biofuels, and even industrial materials in different parts of the world. The first video game ever played in space was Tetris. It was played by Russian cosmonaut Alexander A. Serebrov on a Game Boy that he brought with him in 1993. Because of an incident in which a 14-year-old girl had difficulty returning from a trance-like state, schools in San Diego have banned the use of hypnotism. The decision came after a school presentation held during the 1980s when a student experienced emotional and physical effects that worried teachers and family members. Since then, several school districts in different parts of the United States have begun imposing similar restrictions to avoid hypnosis shows during student activities and public events involving minors. Despite having a circumference of nearly 500,000 miles, the rings surrounding the planet Saturn are only about 1 foot thick. They are made primarily of fragments of ice, rock, and dust orbiting the planet at enormous speeds. Some particles are as small as grains of sand, while others are as large as mountains. Scientists believe that some of this material may have come from moons destroyed by Saturn's powerful gravity millions of years ago. The bones that make up a pigeon skeleton are actually lighter than the total weight of the bird's feathers. Most of the dinosaurs that appear in Steven Spielberg's 1993 blockbuster film Jurassic Park were animals that lived during Earth's Cretaceous period, not the Jurassic period as the title suggests. Velociraptors were not the slick-skinned lizards shown in the movie. Quill knobs discovered on several fossil skeletons have revealed that these animals definitely had feathers. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, men are more than 5 times more likely to die from lightning strikes than women. The collected data showed that 3,389 people died after being struck by lightning, and 85% of them were men. Before they are even born, many female aphids are already pregnant and carrying their own insect offspring. This phenomenon is called telescoping generations, and the process allows the insects to rapidly increase their population. During warm seasons, numerous aphid species can reproduce without males through parthenogenesis, creating nearly identical clones of themselves. Thanks to this ability, a small colony can multiply within days and cover entire plants. This accelerated reproduction is one of the reasons why aphids are considered some of the most persistent agricultural pests in the world. A study published in 2009 revealed that, in noisy environments, people are more likely to try listening to something whispered into their right ear rather than their left. It also showed that subjects were more likely to comply with another person's request if it was delivered into their right ear. One of Ireland's oldest festivals, the Puck Fair, takes place annually from August 10th through August 12th in the town of Killorglin. During the festival, a wild goat is captured and brought down from the mountain. It is crowned King Puck, locked inside a small cage on top of a pedestal for the duration of the festival, and then released back into the wild. While filming the 1964 movie Cheyenne Autumn, some Native American actors kept making inappropriate comments in their native languages because nobody else on the set spoke their language. At least one of those comments made it into the final cut of the film and featured the actors mocking the size of the character's penis. Despite making up only 0.06% of the world's total human population, the Kalenjin community in Kenya is home to the athletes responsible for winning nearly 70% of all elite long-distance races worldwide. At the Berlin Marathon in 2013, Kenyan women won first, second, and fourth place, while Kenyan men won first, second, third, fourth, and fifth place. The fastest overall time belonged to Wilson Kipsang at 2 hours, 3 minutes, and 23 seconds, the fastest marathon time ever recorded up to that date. Located in the Palestinian territories, the city of Jericho dates back more than 10,000 years. In fact, it is the oldest city on Earth. Its earliest settlements emerged near an oasis fed by natural springs, which allowed farming even in extremely ancient times. Over thousands of years, Jericho was inhabited by different civilizations and eventually became surrounded by stone walls considered among the oldest ever built by human beings. At the 1904 Summer Olympics in St. Louis, Missouri, the marathon turned out to be the strangest event, featuring one man who traveled most of the route by automobile, another who used rat poison as a stimulant and had to be carried off the track, and a third who ate rotten apples from an orchard along the way, became sick, took a nap, and still finished the race in fourth place. In 2014, construction of a highway in Iceland was halted because protesters claimed the equipment would have to destroy a church attended only by elves. The city paid to have the church, which appeared only as a giant rock to human eyes, moved by crane before construction of the road was allowed to continue. In late November of 1990, world champion boxer Muhammad Ali flew to Iraq and met with dictator Saddam Hussein. Somehow, he managed to negotiate the release of 15 American prisoners who were being held there and brought them all home to the United States. This happened despite the fact that then-President George H.W. Bush did not approve of it. Thanks to extremely high levels of carbon dioxide, the island of Tasmania is home to what could very well be the cleanest air in the entire world. Much of the air that reaches the region travels thousands of miles across the Southern Ocean without passing over major cities or industrial zones. Because of that, scientists use atmospheric stations in Tasmania to study changes in air composition and precisely measure the global increase of gases present in Earth's atmosphere. The longest golf hole ever played was completed in 2017 by 28-year-old Adam Rolston and his caddy and friend, 42-year-old Ron Rutland. Starting on June 29th at the westernmost point of Mongolia, the pair traveled across the country for 1,249 miles, hitting a golf ball as they went. It took them 82 days to reach their destination in Ulaanbaatar, the nation's capital. To complete the course, it was estimated to be a par 14,000, but Rolston made 20,093 strokes. In 1784, a Japanese treasure hunter named Chonosuke Matsuyama wrote a message on a piece of coconut wood saying that his ship had been wrecked on a South Pacific island. He placed it in a bottle and threw it into the sea. That bottle was not found until 1935, when it finally washed ashore in the very same village where Matsuyama had been born. According to research conducted by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, a car, truck, or other vehicle is stolen somewhere in the United States every 46 seconds. In 2011, the most stolen vehicle, according to the National Insurance Crime Bureau, was the 1994 Honda Accord. It was also the most stolen vehicle from 2008 through 2010. A few weeks after the city of Nagasaki was devastated by a nuclear bomb, the crew members responsible for dropping the explosive on the city spoke with several local Japanese residents, but all members of the aircrew kept their true identities secret. There is a company in Essex, England, that allows people to hire actors to attend their own funerals, so it looks like they were more popular than they really were. Known as Rent-A-Mourner, the actors even attend wakes and tell stories about the deceased as if they had actually known them. The name of the Swedish furniture store IKEA actually stands for Ingvar Kamprad Elmtarid Agunarid, which is the name of the company's founder, the farm where he grew up, and his hometown. On February 28, 2007, 170 Swiss soldiers accidentally invaded the small country of Liechtenstein after getting lost during a nighttime training march. As soon as they realized where they were, the group retreated back into Switzerland, and the government later issued an apology. In response, a spokesperson for the small country stated that it was not a problem and that these things happen. David Copperfield was the first illusionist to receive a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame and has sold more tickets as a solo performer than any other entertainer in history. Breatharians are a group of people who believe that human life can be sustained without food or water, simply through prana. Prana is also known as life force, which is found in the air and light around them. Although many breatharians claim to go long periods without any other nourishment, others have lost their lives trying to follow their example. In Umba Baram, an extinct Australian language, the word for dog is dog, and it is pronounced almost exactly the same way. What makes this so strange is that there is no relationship between English and that language. After uncontrolled flooding caused the cruise ship Oceanos to begin sinking in 1991, its captain and crew quickly abandoned the ship and the passengers on board without even sounding an alarm. The ship's entertainer, Moss Hills, stepped up and used a radio to call for help and managed to save everyone. The crew was accused of negligence. Many perfumes contain something called scatole, a chemical compound with a powerful smell that, ironically, is naturally found in human feces. In extremely small amounts and combined with other ingredients, it can provide sweet and floral notes that have been used by perfumers for decades. Similar substances also appear naturally in flowers such as jasmine and orange blossom. The perfume industry often works with compounds that by themselves smell unpleasant, but when carefully blended, create complex and elegant fragrances. Named after the demigod Hercules, the Hercules beetle, native to Central and South America, can lift more than 100 times its own body weight. Males are famous for their enormous horns, which they use to fight each other for territory and access to females, lifting and throwing rivals from branches or logs. Despite their intimidating appearance, these insects are harmless to humans and spend much of their lives feeding on rotting fruit and decaying plant matter inside tropical rainforests. In 2007, a meteorite crashed into Earth in the Puno region of Peru. Shortly afterward, several local residents began showing signs of a mysterious illness. Some believed that an alien virus had arrived in the town, until it was discovered that the heat from the impact had vaporized arsenic from the region's contaminated groundwater. When woodpeckers strike trees or telephone poles with their beaks, they do so with a force 1,000 times greater than gravity. Despite such impact, these birds possess a specialized skull structure that helps distribute the energy from each strike and protects their brains from severe injury. Their tongues are also surprisingly long and wrap around the skull, partially functioning as additional support during the hammering. Some species can strike surfaces more than 20 times per second while searching for insects or building nests inside wood. A few days before signing the Declaration of Independence on July 4, 1776, Thomas Jefferson bought a new thermometer. He recorded the temperature in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where the document was signed on that historic day at 76 degrees Fahrenheit or 75.9 degrees Fahrenheit. In the 13th century, Pope Gregory IX vilified cats by claiming they were incarnations of Satan. People began slaughtering felines, which caused rat populations to increase and eventually helped spread the Black Death more quickly. A man named Ludger Silbaris got into a bar fight and was thrown into a solitary confinement cell before a massive volcanic eruption devastated the city of Saint-Pierre. However, because he was so well protected, Ludger became one of only 3 survivors after the eruption, and his prison cell is still standing today. Released on June 23, 2017, DJ Khaled's 10th studio album, Grateful, credits his young son Assad as an executive producer. While producing the album's tracks, Khaled watched his baby to see how he reacted to the music. Apparently, when Assad vomited on him while listening to the song Shining, Khaled knew he had a hit on his hands. Known as the Angel of Death, Joseph Mengele, a Nazi doctor at Auschwitz, carried out inhumane experiments on many prisoners during World War II. One of the most shocking cases involved an attempt to join two twins together through an extreme procedure in order to study whether it was possible to create conjoined twins. The experiment failed, and the children suffered severe complications shortly afterward. Before becoming President of the United States, or even a lawyer, Abraham Lincoln was co-owner of a tavern in New Salem, Illinois. He was also the only president to be a licensed bartender. According to scholars, the @ symbol was invented by monks hundreds of years ago. Many historians believe it emerged when medieval scribes began abbreviating Latin words in order to save space and time while copying manuscripts by hand. Over the centuries, the symbol eventually became used in commerce and accounting long before appearing in computers. Decades later, engineer Ray Tomlinson selected it for email addresses because it was an uncommon character that was easy to distinguish on keyboards. Some of the last words spoken by Wayne McLaren, better known as the Marlboro Man and spokesperson for the famous cigarette company, before losing his battle with lung cancer on July 22, 1992, were, "Take care of the children. Tobacco will kill them, and I am living proof of it." Between 2005 and 2007, in an attempt to prevent copyrighted music from being pirated, Sony BMG legally installed rootkits on 22 million of its compact discs. When the disc was inserted into a computer, the software, which could not be uninstalled, modified the user's operating system in a way that made it nearly impossible to copy the compact discs while also sending listening habits back to Sony. Ironically, the software used by the company turned out to be a copyright infringement itself. According to the Smithsonian Institution, sharks have been swimming in Earth's oceans longer than trees have existed on land. The oldest known tree, Archaeopteryx, existed nearly 350 million years ago, while sharks have existed for more than 400 million years. The Harlem Globetrotters have held a draft since 2007 that takes place a few days before the NBA draft, and they have selected people such as Gal Gadot, Tim Tebow, and Usain Bolt. Of course, none of those selections ever joined the team or played for it. During his presidency of the United States, John Quincy Adams approved an expedition to the center of the Earth in an attempt to prove that the planet was hollow. For the blockbuster 1993 film Jurassic Park, the sounds used for the velociraptors were recorded by sound engineer Gary Rydstrom at Marine World and are actually the sounds made by a turtle while mating. On September 7, 2018, Ocean Springs, Mississippi high school student Kaylee Foster was crowned her school's homecoming queen. Shortly afterward, she traded her tiara for a helmet and kicked 2 field goals and 1 extra point to help her school's football team win in overtime. Cranial deformation used to be practiced around the world among different cultures for many centuries and predates written history. Greek physician Hippocrates, considered the father of medicine, wrote the oldest known record of cranial deformation. Scotland's most visited paid tourist attraction, Edinburgh Castle, was actually built on the plug of a volcano formed more than 350 million years ago. The plug is appropriately called Castle Rock. The official legal name of Mexico is the United Mexican States, and it is still used by the government today. The cicada, a flying insect found in Africa, spends 17 years of its life sleeping before waking up, spends 2 weeks mating, and then dies. During most of that time, it remains underground, feeding on sap extracted from tree roots. When it finally emerges, thousands or even millions of cicadas appear at the same time, filling the environment with an extremely loud sound produced by the males to attract mates. This massive phenomenon helps many survive by overwhelming predators with an enormous number of insects available at once. Despite having 6 legs and existing for more than 300 million years, dragonflies are incapable of walking. Their legs are mainly adapted for gripping branches, catching prey in midair, and remaining stable during brief landings. Dragonflies are extremely efficient aerial hunters and can capture mosquitoes, flies, and other insects with astonishing precision while flying. Some species also possess nearly 360-degree vision thanks to their enormous compound eyes, which help them detect tiny movements and react within fractions of a second. In 1961, a bomber flying over North Carolina crashed and broke apart while carrying two powerful hydrogen bombs, killing 3 of the 8 crew members. Before the plane crashed, it dropped both bombs and neither one detonated. A cleanup team found all the remains of the first bomb, but could not locate part of the second one. Guava is considered a superfruit because it contains 4 times the vitamin C found in an orange, 3 times the protein, and 4 times the fiber of a pineapple, and it even has more potassium than the average banana. Australian musician Nick Cave wrote a bizarre sequel proposal for the hit movie Gladiator, in which the character, Maximus Decimus Meridius, traveled into the afterlife, confronted gods, and returned from the dead to lead new battles across different periods of history. Although the screenplay was never used, it later became famous among fans because of how surreal the plot was. Years later, director Ridley Scott developed a completely different official sequel centered on a new story within the Gladiator universe. A study conducted at Michigan State University found that an effective way to dislodge kidney stones was to ride a roller coaster. While testing their findings, researchers also discovered that Big Thunder Mountain at Disneyland was the most effective ride for accomplishing this. The journal Science published a study claiming that between 10 and 30% of Earth's water is older than the sun, and that our bodies contain some of that water. Researchers believe that some of those molecules formed inside interstellar clouds before the solar system itself was born, billions of years ago. That means some drops of water found today in oceans, rivers, and even living beings may have traveled through space long before Earth, the planets, and the sun existed. At the beginning of 2011, a super pack of more than 400 wolves began attacking Verkhoyansk, a town in Russia, killing more than 30 horses in only 4 days. The local government sent hunting parties and brought in experts, all of whom were baffled as to why the animals had formed such an enormous pack. On December 11, 1937, Romford Stadium in London hosted its first cheetah race against 2 greyhounds. The female cheetah named Helen left the dogs far behind, reaching a speed of 55 miles per hour and instantly earning the title of Queen of the Track. On January 28, 1962, a man named Johannes Relike was working in a tin mine in the Hwange district of Zimbabwe when he was attacked by a massive swarm of bees. Relike was stung at least 2,443 times. Every stinger was removed and counted after the ordeal, setting the world record for the highest number of bee stings survived by a single human being. More than 10,000 people died when the United States government added poisonous chemicals to industrial-grade alcohol during Prohibition, in an attempt to prevent people from stealing and distilling it. Apparently, that strategy did not work. During the 51-day siege of the Branch Davidian compound in Waco in 1993, one of the tactics used by federal agents in an attempt to end the standoff was sleep deprivation. Throughout the night, they blasted loud noises through speakers directed at the building, including airplane engines, chanting, pop music, and even the screams of rabbits. Released in 2012, The Lorax features the voice of Danny DeVito as the main character, but not only in the English version of the movie. The actor also provided his voice for the German, Italian, Spanish, and Russian dubbed versions. Although it is seen as a symbol of the desolate American West, the tumbleweed is not American. It is actually a flowering plant from Russia called Kali tragus and was introduced into South Dakota in the 1870s when imported flaxseed was found to be contaminated with kali seeds. The game of chess contains more possible moves than there are particles in the known universe. Each move opens around 38 legal possibilities, and a game consists of about 40 moves per player, meaning that the total number of possible games equals 10 raised to the power of 126. This also means that we still have not discovered every possible move sequence in chess. On September 11, 2001, following the attacks in the United States, all flights were suspended, with the exception of a single airplane that was en route to save a man's life. Taking off from San Diego, California, and landing in Miami, Florida, the aircraft was transporting antivenom for a terrible snakebite a man had suffered. During the flight, the aircraft was escorted by a pair of fighter jets, and the man survived. Over the last 100 years, the Manhattan skyline has grown by more than 984 feet, and continues to grow with more planned buildings. On March 2, 1945, during World War II, Indian soldier Fazal Din was leading an attack against a Japanese position in Burma when he was severely wounded in combat. Despite this, he managed to continue fighting and motivated his comrades before returning to headquarters to report on the situation. Shortly afterward, he died from his wounds and was later recognized for his bravery. Before July 10, 2015, new music releases happened on Tuesdays because of shipping schedules during the pre-digital era. Since then, releases have taken place on Fridays. Death row inmates in the Indiana prison system receive their meals 2 or 3 days before their execution, because on the day they are supposed to die, people rarely have an appetite. The popular animated series Ed, Edd and Eddy was the last major show to use traditional animation before computer-generated imagery became standard in other programs. Often described as the opposite of paranoia, pronoia is a real condition in which the person suffering from it believes that people are secretly conspiring behind their back to do good things for them. Japanese scientists successfully created and bred fluorescent monkeys in order to help better understand how to cure diseases. Because of these experiments, researchers received criticism from different ethics groups. During the several weeks that caterpillars remain in their larval stage, they tend to consume more than 27,000 times their body weight. They also molt several times as they expand, growing up to 1,000 times their original mass. While humans have more than 629 muscles in their much larger bodies, caterpillars have up to 4,000 muscles in their tiny bodies. Vikings sailed to North America and established settlements there during the 11th century, where they cultivated wild grapes, caught salmon, and built canoes using animal skins. Tetranitrotoxicarbon is a hypothetical molecule that was first theorized by a 10-year-old girl from Kansas City, Missouri. In early 2012, 5th-grade student Clara Lazin was working in science class with a molecular model when she discovered a configuration that had never been documented. She is now credited as a co-author of a scientific paper alongside her science teacher. Between 50 and 80% of California's wildfire firefighters are inmates who are paid less than $2 per hour. One of Marvel Comics' main heroes, Wolverine, stands only 5 feet 2 inches tall. But thanks to his adamantium skeleton, he weighs 300 pounds. According to body mass index calculations, this skilled and toned fighter is actually considered extremely obese. Famous inventor Leonardo da Vinci actually designed a robot with an exterior made of medieval German-Italian armor and internal mechanisms around the year 1500. The robot was capable of sitting down, standing up, raising its visor, and moving its arms. Robert Chesbrough, the man who invented and sold petroleum jelly, believed in his product so strongly that he ate a spoonful of the miracle jelly every single day until his death at 96 years old. The USS O'Bannon, a World War II naval destroyer, defeated a Japanese submarine in 1943 by throwing potatoes at the enemy vessel. A plaque was created to commemorate the crew for their ingenuity, but it was stolen during the 1970s. On October 2, 1948, the Buchen Bruse took off from Oslo, Norway on a domestic flight to the city of Hummelvik. While boarding, 76-year-old philosopher Bertrand Russell asked the flight attendants to seat him in the smoking section, claiming that if he could not smoke, he would die. Upon landing, the pilots lost control and the plane crashed, killing 19 people in the non-smoking section. Russell survived after swimming to safety. The Dalmatian was used in the fire service to keep horses calm and also to protect the equipment and carriage during a fire. The federal government of the United States owns a single marijuana farm located on the campus of the University of Mississippi. The last time the United States officially declared war was against Bulgaria, Romania, and Hungary in 1942. In 1993, a group of artists and activists called themselves the Barbie Liberation Organization and performed surgery on between 300 and 500 dolls, swapping the voice boxes of popular Barbies and G.I. Joe action figures before returning them to stores. Reportedly, the Barbie said, "Vengeance is mine," while the G.I. Joe figures said, "The beach is a great place for summer." Astronomers discovered an asteroid that turned out to actually be the third stage of the Apollo 12 spacecraft, which had been orbiting the Sun for 30 years. At the beginning of the 2000s, the object called J002E3 drifted too close to Earth and was pulled into the Hill sphere, which is the strongest nearby source of gravitational force other than the sun. Up to 20% of people suffer from something called white coat syndrome, in which a patient's blood pressure rises dramatically only while they are inside a doctor's office. In many cases, the pressure returns to normal levels as soon as the person leaves the clinical setting. This phenomenon can lead to incorrect hypertension diagnoses if measurements are taken only inside hospitals or clinics. For that reason, many doctors use portable monitors that record blood pressure throughout the day while the patient goes about normal daily activities and remains in familiar environments. Dogs have a second smelling organ located at the back of the nose, known as the Jacobson's organ. It helps improve the canine sense of smell so much that dogs can smell cancer on a patient's breath. Technically, dogs can detect cancer. Thanks to their incredible sense of smell, they have also been trained to identify explosives, drugs, low blood sugar in people with diabetes, and even infectious diseases. Some breeds possess more than 200 million scent receptors, far more than human beings. The first non-white player to join a National Basketball Association team was Wataru Misaka, an American of Japanese descent from Utah who played with the New York Knicks in 1947. Plebeians in ancient Rome would sometimes evacuate an entire city in an event known as the secession of the plebs, leaving the elites to fend for themselves. From March of 1952 through May of 1956, Kent cigarettes sold by the tobacco company Lorillard featured a micronite filter containing carcinogenic crocidolite, also known as blue asbestos. Of the 6 recognized forms of asbestos, experts consider crocidolite to be the most dangerous. During the Middle Ages, 2 men could move in together, combine their resources, and essentially live as a married couple under a legal category known as adelphopoiesis. These kinds of agreements existed in some regions of Europe and allowed people to officially share property, inheritances, and financial responsibilities. The ceremonies could be performed before local or religious authorities, and in certain cases, included symbolic rituals similar to those used in other union contracts of the era. Historians still debate to what extent these relationships were purely economic, familial, or also affectionate. Grand Theft Auto V earned $1 billion during its first 72 hours on sale, making it the fastest-selling entertainment product in history. According to National Geographic, the distance between New York City and London increases by about 1 inch every year. The 2 cities are literally moving farther apart. This movement occurs because the tectonic plates of North America and Eurasia continue slowly separating along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, a massive underwater mountain chain. Although the change is imperceptible to people, over millions of years it has altered entire continents and contributed to the current shape of the Atlantic Ocean. The face of Michael Myers in the Halloween series is actually a mask of William Shatner. The mask worn by the killer in the horror film was really a Captain Kirk mask that the Halloween prop department simply painted white. Shark conservation campaigns led by retired NBA star Yao Ming have resulted in a 50% decline in shark killings for their fins. Different surveys now show that around 91% of Chinese citizens support banning shark fin consumption. One study revealed that around 92% of all baby changing tables in the United Kingdom contained traces of cocaine. The Hollywood Walk of Fame currently features more than 20 fictional characters with their own stars. Among them are Mickey Mouse, Bugs Bunny, Shrek, Godzilla, Woody Woodpecker, Donald Duck, and Snoopy. Over time, new animated and fictional characters have been added as part of global popular culture and entertainment. Charles Herbert Lightoller was an officer serving aboard the RMS Titanic when it sank, and he became trapped underwater. It was not until one of the boilers exploded that he was sent back to the surface. Later in life, he also rescued 130 men from Dunkirk during World War II. In an incredible and tragic coincidence, Regina Rhode attended both Columbine High School and Virginia Tech when violent shooting incidents occurred at both institutions. Fortunately, she managed to stay safe on both occasions. The pharmaceutical company Bayer was involved in a major healthcare controversy related to products used to treat blood clotting disorders that, in some cases, turned out to be contaminated with the human immunodeficiency virus and hepatitis during the 1980s and 90s. The case affected thousands of people in different countries and generated strong criticism towards several pharmaceutical companies in the medical safety controls of that era. A study conducted by researchers at Ohio State University in 2016 found that acetaminophen, a common pain reliever found in products such as Tylenol, may make people less empathetic, meaning they understand the pain experienced by others less than normal. The longest cave system in the world is Mammoth Cave, located in the state of Kentucky. It has more than 397 miles of passageways and is almost twice as long as the second-place system, the underwater cave Sac-Actun in Mexico. Animal shelters in Germany are all no-kill shelters because it is against the law to kill vertebrates without a proper reason. Bees are the only animals on Earth that create food for human consumption. The honey they produce can last for years without spoiling, thanks to its low moisture and natural antibacterial properties. In addition to producing honey, bees play an essential role in pollinating crops and wild plants around the world. It is estimated that a large portion of the food consumed by human beings depends, at least partially, on pollinators like them, including fruits, nuts, coffee, and many vegetables. Workers at a 3M adhesive tape plant in South Carolina discovered an invisible wall of static electricity that was so powerful that people could not walk through it. The phenomenon appeared because of the enormous buildup of electrical charge generated by machines rapidly unrolling large amounts of adhesive tape. Employees described the sensation as a physical barrier that made their skin stand up and produced visible sparks in the air. Industrial static electricity can become so powerful that some factories use special discharge systems to prevent fires, explosions, or damage to electronic equipment. Argentina received its name from European settlers who believed that riches were hidden in the mountains. In Italian, Argentina loosely translates to silvery, and people believed that a legendary silver mountain was hidden somewhere in the region. Salloup was a popular hot beverage and a less expensive substitute for coffee or tea during the 18th and 19th centuries. That changed when rumors began spreading that it cured venereal diseases. After that, drinking Salloup became embarrassing, and the beverage disappeared from stores. There are more people in the world who learned English as a second language than people who learned it as their native language. The language became a global tool for business, aviation, technology, tourism, and international entertainment. It is currently taught in schools across dozens of countries from a very early age, and millions of people use it daily even if they do not live in English-speaking countries. Much of the most consumed content on the internet, including movies, video games, and popular music, is also originally produced in English. The first time a black and white barcode was scanned on a product was at a supermarket in Troy, Ohio, on June 26, 1974. The scanned product was a pack of Wrigley's Juicy Fruit gum. In 1986, Lake Nyos in Cameroon experienced a carbon dioxide eruption that shot more than 328 feet into the air, creating a cloud. When the cloud settled to the ground, it killed more than 1,000 people and more than 3,000 head of cattle. During World War II, the German pharmaceutical company Bayer, known for popularizing aspirin, was linked to unethical medical practices carried out during that period. Some concentration camp prisoners were used in experiments related to product and procedure testing, actions that were later widely condemned by the international community. Although they are born male, oysters can change gender, becoming female in order to lay eggs. Then, once they release the eggs, they can change back to male if they wish. At least 28 Sikhs were killed between October 31st and November 3rd, 1984, during the anti-Sikh riots. Some sources actually believe that the death toll was closer to 8,000, with at least 3,000 deaths in Delhi alone. On February 5, 1958, while conducting a training exercise near Tybee Island off the coast of Georgia, United States, the United States Air Force lost a Mark 15 nuclear bomb when an F-86 fighter jet and a B-47 bomber collided in midair. The nuclear bomb was dropped to prevent detonation, but it was lost in the Atlantic Ocean and, despite extensive searches, has never been located. The Holocaust Memorial Project in Berlin was halted in 2003 after people discovered that the company that created the anti-graffiti coating used on the monuments was the same company that created the gas used to kill millions of Jews in World War II concentration camps. When Amy Irving divorced Steven Spielberg in 1989, she received $100 million in the settlement, despite the couple having signed a prenuptial agreement. The judge ruling on the case threw out the document, mainly because the prenuptial agreement had been written on a cocktail napkin. Henry Cavill was the final choice to play James Bond in Casino Royale, but the producers wanted an older Bond and ultimately gave the role to Daniel Craig. In 1967, after an advertising campaign, the citizens of Pico Asa, a town in Ecuador, elected Pulvapiés, a foot deodorant, as their mayor. Considered the toughest sled dog race in the world, the Yukon Quest takes place every February. The race begins in Fairbanks, Alaska, and ends more than 1,000 miles away in Whitehorse, the capital of Canada's Yukon Territory. Due to the extreme cold and the lack of assistance allowed for each participant, the event is truly dangerous. The fastest time anyone completed the Yukon Quest was in 2010, when Hans Gatt and his dogs finished the entire route in 9 days and 26 minutes. Body odor and poor personal hygiene became such a major problem at Super Smash Bros. Tournaments that participants were disqualified if they smelled bad. Organizers even went so far as to hand out deodorant to players. Some African giant pouched rats have been trained to detect tuberculosis and can do so more accurately than many laboratory tests. These animals possess an extremely advanced sense of smell and have been used in several African countries to examine hundreds of medical samples in a very short amount of time. In addition to detecting tuberculosis, they have also been trained to locate hidden landmines because their low weight allows them to walk across dangerous terrain without triggering explosives. Some can inspect a minefield the size of a tennis court in less than half an hour. If you took 1 penny and doubled your money every day, you would become a millionaire in just 27 days. The growth seems small at first, but after a few weeks, the amounts increase explosively because of the effect of constant doubling. This same principle is used to explain phenomena such as compound interest, the spread of certain technologies, and even the growth of bacterial populations. A squid's esophagus passes through its donut-shaped brain, meaning that if it swallows something excessively large, it can actually cause brain damage. When movie star Liam Neeson was a schoolteacher, he punched one of his students in the face after the student threatened him with a knife. While designing Yoda for Star Wars Episode V, The Empire Strikes Back, Hollywood visionary Stuart Freeborn modeled the wise green Jedi Master's face after his own, mixed with that of genius inventor Albert Einstein. When filled to maximum capacity, Memorial Stadium at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, Nebraska, holds 85,458 people. This exceeds the population of every other city in Nebraska except Omaha and Lincoln itself, meaning the stadium briefly becomes the third largest city in the state. The countries of Haiti and Liechtenstein had exactly the same flag until 1936, when both nations attended the Olympic Games in Berlin, Germany. To distinguish itself, Liechtenstein added a crown to its official flag 1 year later. During the American Civil War, the North played a major role in the South's counterfeiting problem by introducing large amounts of fake currency into numerous communities. This caused massive inflation and negatively affected the Confederacy's economy. If you get caught drunk or acting violently in Japan, the police may place you on top of a futon and roll you up like a burrito. There is a medical term for having muscle spasms in the thumb and index finger, also known as writer's cramp. It is called graphospasm. According to the National Park Service, George Washington had a biracial family after his adopted son, part Custis, fathered children with enslaved women. In addition to being the father of those children, Custis was also the father-in-law of Robert E. Lee. The animated superheroes the Powerpuff Girls were actually the college project of creator Craig McCracken. At the time, the project had the original name Whoop-Ass Stew. Typhoons, cyclones, and hurricanes are all the same weather phenomenon. They receive their classification based on where they form. In the Atlantic and North Pacific Oceans, they are called hurricanes. In the Northwestern Pacific, they are called typhoons. And in the Southeastern Indian Ocean, they are called severe tropical cyclones. A 48-year-old schizophrenic computer programmer named Terry Davis spent 10 years developing an operating system called Temple OS. He claimed he created it so people could speak with God. During World War II, there was a unit in Auschwitz concentration camp called Canada, where valuables confiscated from prisoners were stored. It was given that name because at the time, the country of Canada was believed to be a land of unimaginable wealth. In 1978, an architecture college student named Diane Hartley saved an untold number of lives when she pointed out a flaw in the construction of a skyscraper in New York City. If the mistake had not been corrected, the 59-story building likely would have collapsed, taking everyone inside and on the streets below with it. During photosynthesis, the process that converts sunlight into energy, plants emit a light called fluorescence. It is invisible to the human eye, but it can be detected by satellites in Earth's orbit. Scientists use this faint light signal to monitor the health of forests, crops, and entire ecosystems from space. When a plant suffers from drought, pollution, or extreme temperatures, the intensity of that fluorescence can change before visible damage appears. Thanks to this technology, researchers can detect agricultural and environmental problems on a large scale much faster than through traditional observations from the ground. Unlike humans, seagulls can drink both fresh water and seawater because they are capable of separating salt and excreting it through their nostrils. These birds possess special glands located near the eyes that filter excess salt from the blood before expelling it in the form of concentrated droplets. Thanks to this adaptation, they can spend long periods away from freshwater sources while flying over oceans and coastlines. Many species of seagulls are also incredibly opportunistic and can feed on fish, insects, food scraps, and even small animals. There are people who suffer from a psychological disorder called boanthropy, in which the individual believes that they are a cow or another subtype of bovine animal. Documented cases are extremely rare and are usually connected to severe psychotic episodes, schizophrenia, or uncommon neurological disorders. Throughout history, boanthropy has even been mentioned in ancient royal accounts and early medical texts. Some patients have gone so far as to imitate bovine behavior for weeks, such as walking on all fours, grazing, or making sounds similar to mooing, while remaining completely convinced that they are not human. During the 1950s, gold was worth less than aluminum. Gold was priced at only $664 per kilogram, while aluminum was worth nearly double that amount at an enormous $1,200 per kilogram. This happened because, at the time, finding aluminum in its pure form was extremely rare, and extracting it from bauxite, the world's main source of the metal, was very expensive. Although most of the population speaks Spanish, as of 2009, Bolivia's constitution recognizes 37 official languages. These include indigenous languages such as Quechua, Aymara, and Guarani, along with several languages spoken by much smaller communities spread across different regions of the country. The measure sought to give legal and cultural recognition to indigenous peoples who had little official representation for centuries. Bolivia is considered one of the most linguistically diverse nations in South America, especially in Andean and Amazonian areas. The Dieffenbachia genus, also known as dumb cane, can temporarily leave someone speechless if they come into contact with its poison. Its leaves contain microscopic calcium oxalate crystals that can cause intense irritation, swelling of the mouth, and difficulty speaking or swallowing. Despite that, it remains one of the most popular ornamental indoor plants because of its large green leaves with pale markings. In many homes and offices, people are advised to keep it away from pets and small children in order to prevent accidents. In 1989, while on death row in South Carolina, convicted murderer Michael Anderson Godwin decided to multitask by repairing his broken television while answering nature's call in his cell. After biting a wire that was still connected to the plugged-in television, he electrocuted himself, effectively turning his toilet into a version of the electric chair that awaited him. The MGM Grand is one of the largest and most extravagant hotels and casinos in all of Las Vegas, and it is estimated that an enormous amount of 15,000 pillowcases are washed in its laundry facilities every single day. The resort contains thousands of rooms, several restaurants, entertainment arenas, and a gigantic casino that operates practically 24 hours a day. Its internal operations require industrial equipment capable of processing tons of sheets, towels, and bedding daily to keep one of the most visited resorts in the world running smoothly. In 1883, mongooses were released into sugarcane fields in Hawaii in an attempt to control the growing rat populations. However, because rats are nocturnal and mongooses are active during the day, the new animals failed to have an impact. Farmers quickly discovered that they now had problems with large populations of both animals, while native bird populations plummeted. The largest bank robbery in English history was committed by a group of men known as the Bad Grandpa's Gang. The thieves, the oldest of whom was 76 years old, stole more than $200 million in cash and jewelry. The heist took place during a holiday weekend in Hatton Garden, London's jewelry district, where the criminals drilled through thick concrete walls to gain access to safety deposit boxes. Many of them were veteran criminals with decades of experience in robberies and high-precision break-ins. In 1973, movie star Anthony Hopkins traveled to London, England, searching for a book that a movie he was involved in was based on. That book, The Girl from Petrovka, was unavailable in every store the actor visited. Eventually, he gave up. But while waiting for a train home, he sat on a bench and found an unattended copy of that same novel on the bench beside him. When meeting George Pfeiffer, the author of The Girl from Petrovka, in 1975, Hopkins was shocked to learn that the writer did not even have a copy himself. He had lent his only copy to a friend after adding important notes in the margins. Amazingly, the book Hopkins found was the exact same one that Pfeiffer had lost. When food begins to run scarce, bootlace worms begin consuming themselves. Experts claim that these adaptable creatures can eat up to 95% of their own bodies and still survive. In addition, they are considered some of the longest animals on the planet, since certain species can easily exceed 98 feet in length. They mainly inhabit ocean floors and secrete a toxic substance to immobilize their prey, making them surprisingly efficient predators despite their simple appearance. The book that holds the record for being the most stolen book from public libraries is actually the Guinness World Records. For decades, numerous libraries reported the constant disappearance of copies because of the book's enormous popularity and readers' desire to keep it. In many places, newer editions were placed near counters or in monitored areas because they frequently vanished shortly after arriving. The book also became one of the best-selling reference titles on the planet, with millions of copies distributed in dozens of different languages. In 1993, archaeologists discovered what are believed to be the oldest pieces of chewing gum on the Swedish island of Orust. 3 pieces of chewed birch resin were found, each dating back more than 9,000 years. In 1889, when Nintendo was founded as a playing card company, its products became incredibly popular among the Yakuza. The organized crime syndicate used the cards in gambling halls, and Nintendo quickly became their main supplier. If it were not for the enormous amount of money brought in through their dealings with the Yakuza, Nintendo likely would not be the massive video game company it is today. Ironically, after transitioning into video games and releasing the Super Nintendo Entertainment System in 1990, Nintendo was forced to ship its new console at night because the Yakuza organization kept stealing daytime shipments due to the console's popularity. According to a report published by the Government Accountability Office, the nuclear weapon system of the United States is incredibly outdated and still operates using floppy disks, a storage format that has not been popular since the 1980s. In April 2015, Haley Atwell, who portrays Peggy Carter in Marvel's Captain America films, took the photo for her driver's license while fully dressed and made up for the movie. Theoretically, 1 gram of DNA could hold around 455 exabytes of data, which is enough to store all the data saved by every major technology company combined, including Facebook and Google. During a snowstorm in Fort Keogh, Montana, in January of 1887, the largest snowflakes ever recorded fell from the sky. A local rancher stated that they were larger than milk pans and measured one that turned out to be more than 15 inches wide. The first hot air balloon flight took place in Versailles in September 1783, but instead of humans, the passengers were a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. The experiment was organized by brothers Joseph-Michel Montgolfier and Jacques-Étienne Montgolfier in front of members of the French royal family. The animals were chosen to observe how living creatures reacted to high altitudes before allowing human flights. Shortly afterward, the first human passengers began rising above Paris in similar balloons, marking the beginning of modern aviation. Before passing away on July 4, 2013, 55-year-old Cleveland Browns superfan Scott Ensminger requested that 6 members of his favorite team serve as pallbearers, saying that he wanted the Browns to let him down one last time. In 1807, Pall Mall in the city of London, England, became the first street in history to be illuminated with gaslights. It is possible to walk through Pall Mall today, although modern streetlights have obviously replaced the gas lamps. The Walt Disney Company is the second largest purchaser of explosives in the world, behind only the United States Department of Defense. Disney is also the largest consumer of fireworks on Earth. Under Hitler's regime in Nazi Germany, the guillotine executed nearly as many people as it did during the French Revolution. In 1974, 17-year-old Neville Eben was riding his moped in Hamilton, Bermuda, when he was struck by a taxi and tragically killed. About a year later, his brother Erskine was riding that same moped down the same road when he was hit and killed by the very same taxi, driven by the very same man. In 2007, Senna and Aiden Klarick, a couple in a loveless marriage in Zenica, Bosnia, were each looking for someone else online. Both found other users they felt could be their soulmates, but when they went to meet in person, they discovered they had arranged to meet each other. Despite the unlikely coincidence and the love they had shared online, each accused the other of cheating, and the couple eventually divorced. In August 1957, Buddy Holly and the Crickets became the first white band to perform at the Apollo Theater in Harlem, New York. Because of a misunderstanding, the man who hired the band believed he was booking the Crickets, an R&B group with a similar name made up of African-American men, but instead received 3 white men from Texas. Since it was already too late to change anything, Buddy Holly's band took the stage and, after a rough beginning, eventually won over the audience. In 2012, in an attempt to reduce the tragedies taking place at the Mapo Bridge in Seoul, South Korea, the local government, together with advertising and insurance companies, launched a campaign that included installing messages, paintings, sculptures, and motion-activated lights. Everything was designed to provide support and remind passers-by that they were not alone. However, the following year, incidents at the location increased significantly. Between August 28th and September 3rd, 1970, tens of thousands of people attended an event in Clackamas County, Oregon, called Vortex 1. The free event was described as a biodegradable life festival and remains the only large-scale rock festival in the United States to ever be sponsored by a Republican governor. However, the entire thing was actually a strategy designed to keep young people away from Portland, where then-President Richard Nixon was visiting for a convention. And it worked. There are more countries on FIFA's membership list than in the United Nations. There are currently 212 FIFA members, while the United Nations has only 193 members. In Slovakia and some other parts of Europe, it is a common Christmas tradition to keep a carp swimming in the family bathtub for 1 or 2 days before killing it and preparing it for Christmas Eve dinner. In Tokyo, Japan, vending machines offer a large selection of wigs that you can buy for your dog. The trend became so popular that a much larger assortment can now be purchased through online stores. The act or practice of eating horse meat is called hippophagy. The word comes from ancient Greek, combining the terms hippos, meaning horse, and phagein, meaning to eat. Although horse meat consumption is rare or socially rejected in several countries, in some regions of Europe and Asia, it is still part of traditional dishes. Historically, hippophagy increased during times of war, famine, and food shortages, when many populations turned to any available source of protein to survive. The classic arcade game, Pac-Man, was originally designed to never end. However, if you are skilled enough to reach level 256, the game glitches out and makes the level impossible to beat. The error occurs because of a memory limitation in the original code, causing part of the screen to fill with scrambled symbols and numbers. For years, reaching that point was considered a legendary achievement among arcade players because it required hours of concentration and nearly perfect movement. There was a crossover event between Marvel and DC Comics in the mid-1990s that featured the greatest heroes from both universes facing off. In the series, Quicksilver challenged Flash to a race. Flash, disappointed that the two speedsters were not friends, ultimately won. If it were not for the incredible Robert Englund, who portrayed Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street films, Mark Hamill would not have been cast as Luke Skywalker. The Star Wars actor was staying on Englund's couch, while the horror movie legend was briefly being considered for the role of Han Solo. Englund encouraged Hamill to audition for Skywalker, and, of course, he did, and landed the iconic role. For his brief appearance as a drugged-out criminal in the 1986 comedy Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Charlie Sheen stayed awake for 48 hours before filming so he would look authentic. In an effort to detect nuclear testing carried out by Soviet forces in the late 1940s, the United States Air Force launched Project Mogul. The operation involved microphones mounted on high-altitude hot air balloons capable of detecting sound waves across long distances. Several churches in Malta have 2 clocks. The one on the right shows the correct time and is used by locals to know when to attend Mass. The one on the left is intentionally incorrect and is there to confuse the devil so he cannot interrupt the services. In November 1995, Marvel released a special one-shot comic with a much darker story than usual, in which the Punisher loses his family during a clash between superheroes and supervillains. From that moment on, he begins an intense quest for revenge that ends up affecting characters from both sides before the story reaches a tragic ending for him as well. Like many countries, India has an annual holiday that celebrates children, but unlike other nations, its Children's Day is on November 14th, exactly 9 months after Valentine's Day. To prove that he was receiving unfair grades from a Harvard English professor, author Michael Crichton once submitted an essay by George Orwell and claimed that it was his own. The professor unknowingly gave the essay a B-. After being denied a discounted rate while buying syrup in bulk, American businessman Claude Hatcher promised himself that he would never buy Coca-Cola again and would instead create his own soft drink. Hatcher kept his promise and created Royal Crown, known as RC Cola. During the French Revolution of 1830, Louis Antoine became King of France when his father, King Charles X, abdicated. However, shortly afterward, Antoine also gave up the throne, having been king for literally less than 20 minutes. The University of Minnesota was established before Minnesota was even a state. The school opened in 1851, and it was not until 1858 that the state joined the Union. If your eyes were as good as the wide field and planetary camera on the Hubble Space Telescope, you would be able to read the fine print of a standard newspaper from more than 1 mile away. During World War II, the Dickin Medal for Bravery was awarded to Gustave the Pigeon after he flew 150 miles to the British mainland to report news about the Normandy invasion. Only 10 people have been named honorary members of the Harlem Globetrotters, and that list includes 2 popes, Pope John Paul II and Pope Francis. In 2002, researcher Andrew Balmford conducted a study and found that 8-year-old children in Great Britain were able to correctly identify 80% of all Pokémon, but only around 50% of common wildlife species. Before his criminal career, the famous bank robber John Dillinger had a professional baseball career playing shortstop for the Martinsville Athletics. In the summer of 1962, American scientists detonated a hydrogen bomb 100 times more powerful than the one dropped on Hiroshima, just outside Earth's atmosphere, simply to see what would happen. After declaring bankruptcy 3 times in 60 years, Wensleydale Cheese was on the verge of collapse, but it received a huge boost when it was mentioned in a Wallace and Gromit animated short film. Sales skyrocketed, and the company was saved thanks to a cartoon. The Beatles' hit song, Strawberry Fields Forever, is actually about a Liverpool orphanage that John Lennon frequently visited when he was younger. Mark Twain's famous storybook character Huckleberry Finn was actually based on Twain's childhood friend, Tom Blankenship. Tom, who was 4 years older than Twain, grew up alongside the author in Hannibal, Missouri. At Christmas dinner in 1972, 13-year-old Marie Heffernan developed a severe case of bronchitis and laryngitis and was rushed to a hospital in Wollongong, Australia. The condition disappeared after 6 weeks, but she still could not speak. 12 years later, a coughing fit forced out a ball of black mud containing a silver coin. Marie's mother had placed the coin inside a Christmas pudding 12 years earlier. On August 13, 1941, Henry Ford presented his new car at the Dearborn Days Community Festival in Dearborn, Michigan. Nicknamed the soybean car, the vehicle weighed only 2/3 as much as the average steel car and was made partly from soybeans. In an effort to raise money for an anti-poverty organization known as GLIDE, a lunch with billionaire investment giant Warren Buffett was auctioned on eBay. Bids started at only $25,000, but closed at an enormous $3.3 million. On October 29, 2012, between 30 and 50 thugs appeared at the home of 38-year-old Shen Xingsong in Hebei Province, China, sent by a real estate developer who wanted the property. As they forced their way in, Shen, a kung fu expert, fought them off, knocking several unconscious and successfully defending his home. The remaining attackers retreated. When looking at the night sky, it is possible to see nearly 5 times the number of meteors after midnight than before midnight. This happens because, during those hours, the part of Earth where the observer is located faces directly toward the direction in which the planet travels around the Sun. The most famous meteor showers, such as the Perseids and the Geminids, can produce dozens of streaks per hour in dark skies far away from light pollution. Only 8 months after buying Dominic's, a pizza restaurant, with his brother Tom for $500, James Monahan traded his share to Tom for a used Volkswagen Beetle. 38 years later, Tom sold 93% of what is now known as Domino's Pizza for $1 billion. In parts of Europe, giant catfish have been seen intentionally beaching themselves in order to quickly attack pigeons and other birds. The fish then drag their feathered meals back into the water and drown them, much like an alligator does. Some of these European catfish can exceed 6 feet in length and weigh more than 220 pounds, making them some of the largest freshwater fish on the continent. French researchers documented this behavior in the Tarn River and discovered that certain specimens perfected the technique over time, carrying out rapid attacks lasting only a few seconds to avoid becoming stranded outside the water. Before becoming James Bond or Remington Steele, actor Pierce Brosnan spent 3 years performing as a fire eater in the circus. He learned the technique while he was young in London after meeting a street performer who taught him the basic tricks of the trade. During that stage of his life, he also worked in small shows and trained performance skills that later helped him in his acting career. Years later, Brosnan admitted that the experience remained one of the strangest and most dangerous periods of his life. On February 19, 1916, 28-year-old Marshall Mabey was working on a new subway line in Brooklyn, New York, when a buildup of air pressure shot him and 2 co-workers out of the tunnel, through the mud and water of the East River, more than 24 feet into the air. Although the other men died, Mabey miraculously did not suffer serious injuries. Noella Rukundo, a woman from Burundi, survived a shocking murder attempt after the people hired by her husband decided to let her go free. According to the story, the men refused to carry out the job and allowed her to return home. She later surprised her husband 5 days afterward when she suddenly appeared at her own funeral. On August 28, 2017, Hurricane Harvey was dropping so much rain across the southern United States that the National Weather Service had to add 2 new colors, light and dark purple, to its graphics because the amount of water had more than doubled the dark red flood indicator of more than 15 inches. When exposed to prolonged periods of microgravity in space, an astronaut's heart actually begins to shrink. Without needing to work as hard to pump blood in the absence of gravity, the heart muscle loses part of its mass over time. For that reason, astronauts perform intense exercise routines every day aboard the International Space Station, using bicycles, treadmills, and resistance machines specially designed for the space environment. On November 3, 1986, a 12-member jury was heading to a courtroom to hear arguments in a lawsuit filed against Otis, the elevator company, when the elevator they were in broke down and got stuck. The elevator was an Otis elevator. During the 1960 Summer Olympics, Prince Constantine II, who would later become the last king of Greece, won the country's first sailing gold medal since 1912. In 1965, 4-year-old Roger Lozier was saved from drowning by a woman named Alice Blaze. 9 years later, while floating on a raft at the same beach, Roger pulled a man from the water and saved him from drowning, and that man turned out to be Alice's husband. A man named Daniel Steibelt once challenged Beethoven to an improvisation contest. When it was Beethoven's turn to play, he took the sheet music, turned it upside down, and placed it on the music stand. His performance frustrated Steibelt to the point that he left before the music had ended and made it clear that he would never perform at any event to which Beethoven was invited. As an April Fool's Day joke, National Public Radio posted a link on its Facebook page accusing Americans of no longer reading things. The post quickly received a large number of comments from outraged people, but those who actually read the content in the link were congratulated. NPR was showing that a large number of people comment without ever reading, even when the topic is reading. Because children in Nigeria did not have much access to cookies, Sesame Street created its own version of Cookie Monster, known as Zobi the Yam Monster. Al Capone's business card claimed that he was involved in the used furniture business. Whenever he had trouble with authorities, the gangster would present his card and claim he was only a second-hand furniture salesman. In September 2011, after a police search team failed to locate a 77-year-old hunter who had gone missing in a forest near Lac Saint-Jean, Quebec, Canada, for 2 days, the hunter's friend and former professional wrestler, Raymond Rougeau, climbed into his seaplane and flew over the area conducting his own search, eventually finding the man alive. During the 44th Annual Academy Awards in 1972, Comedian Charlie Chaplin received an honorary Oscar for his achievements in film. His appearance at the ceremony marked the first time Chaplin had been in the United States in 20 years after being labeled a communist, and he was welcomed as he walked on stage with a 12-minute standing ovation from the audience of his fellow filmmakers. The existence of atoms and the space between them was proposed in 400 before Christ by the philosopher Democritus. He believed that all matter was made up of tiny, indivisible particles called atoms, an idea that was surprisingly advanced for its time. His theories were developed without microscopes or modern scientific tools, relying only on observation and philosophical reasoning. Although many ancient thinkers rejected his ideas for centuries, similar concepts eventually became the foundation of modern physics and chemistry thousands of years later. In 2001, a 10-year-old girl named Laura Buxton released a helium balloon with a note asking for it to be returned to her address in the Midlands of England. It was found 140 miles away in a field by another girl who was also named Laura Buxton. On top of that, the girls were only a few months apart in age and were the same height, despite both being tall for their age. Adding to the coincidences, each of them had a 3-year-old black Labrador retriever, a rabbit, and a guinea pig. In January 1931, while staying at a hotel in Paris, France, a waiter warned novelist Arnold Bennett to avoid drinking water. Bennett ordered a glass of water anyway, insisting that it was safe, but it proved to be a fatal mistake, and he died of typhoid fever 2 months later. Bonobos, endangered great apes that happen to be the closest living relatives of human beings, are naturally bisexual and do not seem to discriminate by age or gender when participating in mating activities. The Steinbiergeburt is an honored German tradition that allows brewery employees to consume as much free beer as they want while working. On July 11, 2013, people across India worked together to break a world record by planting more trees within a 24-hour period than any group before them. In an effort to combat climate change, more than 800,000 volunteers showed up to complete the feat, planting an estimated 50 million trees. Around 20% of all calories consumed by human beings worldwide come from rice consumption. In many countries throughout Asia, Africa, and Latin America, this food has been part of the daily diet for thousands of years and is cultivated in enormous terraces and flooded fields. There are more than 40,000 different varieties of rice, some of which are used for very specific traditional dishes, ranging from Japanese sushi to Spanish paella and Italian risotto. Iquitos, the capital of the Maynas province and the Loreto region, is the 6th most populous city in Peru. Despite having a population of more than 470,000 residents, Iquitos can only be accessed by river or air. It is the largest city on the planet that cannot be reached by road. The oldest continuously cultivated garden in the world is one of the classical gardens of Suzhou in China. It is 973 years old. The gardens of Suzhou are famous for combining ponds, bridges, ornamental rocks, and pavilions designed to represent miniature natural landscapes. For centuries, they were considered places of rest for Chinese nobles, artists, and scholars. Many survived wars, fires, and political changes, preserving traditional gardening techniques that are still used today. Since the age of 10, United Kingdom rapper MIA had no contact with her father, a man who fought against the Sri Lankan government during the Civil War as a Tamil tiger. In an effort to get him to contact her, the artist titled her debut studio album, Arular, in his honor. Her goal was for him to search his own name on Google, see the album, and then contact her. And the plan worked. The actors who portray Cersei and Bronn in HBO's epic series Game of Thrones are never together in the same scene because the two actors who portray them, Lena Headey and Jerome Flynn, dated in real life and had a terrible breakup. Both reportedly have stipulations in their contracts stating that they will never be in the same room together. By 2017, the country with the slowest internet connections in the Southeast Asian region was the Philippines, with an average speed of only 3.54 megabits per second. George Washington was the first and only president of the United States to receive 100% of the electoral votes. He achieved this feat in both the election of 1789 and the election of 1792, when all available electors voted for him unanimously. His enormous popularity came largely from his leadership during the Revolutionary War and the trust he inspired in a newly formed nation. Even after leaving office, his decision not to seek a third term helped establish political traditions that would influence the country for generations. The reason Baloo from the Jungle Book appears lazy is because his characteristics are based on a sloth bear, an animal with a gloomy appearance that mainly lives in India and Nepal. These bears possess long, curved claws and a specialized snout that they use to break open termite mounds and suck up insects with tremendous force. Despite their calm and clumsy appearance, sloth bears can become extremely aggressive when threatened and are considered one of the most unpredictable bears in Asia. In 2009, Brian Acton was rejected for a position at Facebook, and it may have been the best thing that ever happened to him. That is because 5 years later, in 2014, Facebook bought Acton's company and the app they developed, a little thing called WhatsApp, for $19 billion. Acton took $50 million from the deal and invested it into Signal, an app that competed with WhatsApp. And then, on March 20th, 2018, he tweeted that everyone should delete Facebook. A bite from a Russell's viper can cause an adult human to go through a type of reverse puberty. These snakes, which are found in Southeast Asia, possess venom capable of damaging a person's pituitary gland to the point that it stops producing hormones. This can cause the individual to lose sexual desire, fertility, and even body hair. Of course, this can only happen if the snake bite does not kill the person first. In 1994, a lawsuit was filed against Apple over its new code name for the Power Macintosh 7100. Internally, it was called Carl Sagan, after the famous astronomer. But after learning about the lawsuit, Apple changed the code name to BHA. John M. Allegro, one of the translators of the Dead Sea Scrolls, was convinced that Christianity was actually based on a psychedelic mushroom and fertility cult. When the local council realized that people were constantly speeding along a road in Arnprior, Scotland, they had the road lines repainted as wavy lines. However, the twisted lines on the straight road have not had the desired effect and have instead annoyed local residents. Frito-Lay's Flamin' Hot Cheetos product was invented by a man named Richard Montañez, who was working as a janitor at one of the company's factories when he came up with the idea. Today, that man is an executive vice president at PepsiCo. In 1993, while filming The Saint of Fort Washington, actor Ving Rhames met a homeless man who quickly turned out to actually be his older brother, Junior. The older Rhames brother had been missing, and his family had been searching for him ever since he served in Vietnam. When French inventor Louis Réard could not find a model willing to show off his new clothing invention, the bikini, in 1946, he turned to 19-year-old Micheline Bernardini, who accepted. While other models claimed the swimsuit was too small, Bernardini, an exotic dancer, had no problem showing some skin. The fashion line eventually took off and can now be seen on nearly every warm beach on Earth. Between December 5th and 6th, 1928, a violent confrontation occurred during a strike by workers of the United Fruit Company in Colombia. The workers were protesting in order to demand better working conditions and basic labor rights. The situation ended tragically when the Colombian government sent the army to control the demonstrations, resulting in numerous deaths and injuries. This historical episode is known as the Banana Massacre. In 1924, while imprisoned in Landsberg Fortress in Bavaria, Germany, after a failed attempt to seize power in Munich, Adolf Hitler wrote a letter to Jacob Furlan, the owner of a Mercedes-Benz dealership. In the letter, Hitler begged for a loan so he could buy a limousine he had his heart set on, since the future dictator was very broke at the time. Before officially moving it back to Lisbon, the capital of Portugal was once Rio de Janeiro. It was the only European capital that was not actually located in Europe. This happened at the beginning of the 19th century when the Portuguese royal family fled the Napoleonic invasions and moved the entire royal court to the Americas. During that period, Rio became the political center of the Portuguese Empire, receiving nobles, officials, printing presses, libraries, and many institutions that rapidly transformed the city. On the set of the 2017 Spider-Man: Homecoming, Michael Keaton constantly teased Tom Holland by quoting lines he had said as the Dark Knight. During one particular fight scene in which Holland's Spider-Man was throwing punches at Keaton's Vulture, the older actor turned around and darkly whispered, "I am Batman," leaving the younger Holland confused. In Hong Kong, China, it is possible to buy Campbell's soup flavored with watercress and duck gizzard, while in Mexico, it is possible to buy poblano pepper cream soup. For centuries, many Buddhist monks practiced self-mummification. in which they consumed only water, nuts, fruit, and seeds gathered from nearby forests and mountains, and then sealed themselves inside a small tomb with a breathing tube and a bell. If the monk did not ring the bell one day, he was considered dead. The tube was removed from the tomb, and the tomb was sealed for 1,000 days, resulting in a mummified body. After being eaten, some insect species, such as the pea aphid, self-destruct by exploding in an attempt to scare or even kill their enemies. Certain insects possess extreme defensive mechanisms capable of releasing sticky, toxic, or foul-smelling substances when attacked. In some cases, these chemical explosions also serve to alert the rest of the colony about the presence of nearby predators. Similar strategies can be found in ants, termites, and bombardier beetles, small animals that compensate for their fragility with surprisingly aggressive defense methods. During the middle of World War II, the demand for penicillin was far greater than the available supply, so doctors resorted to recycling it by taking the urine of someone who had been given the antibiotic and extracting any penicillin that had passed through the person's body so it could be given to someone else. In 1990, Fred Rogers, the charismatic Mr. Rogers from the PBS program of the same name, and his production company sued the Ku Klux Klan in an attempt to stop the organization from impersonating him in an extremely racist and homophobic phone message they were distributing. A judge ordered the KKK to stop and hand over the tapes. The 1976 movie Rocky was filmed in only 28 days, with star Sylvester Stallone and the small film crew driving around the city of Philadelphia in a van, jumping out whenever director John Avildsen saw a colorful location. The character Tim McCracken, portrayed by Paul D'Amato in the 1977 film Slapshot, served as one of the inspirations behind the massive sideburns and facial hair of the legendary X-Men character Wolverine. The language spoken by Pingu, the claymation children's television character from Switzerland, is not simply gibberish. It is actually a nonsense language called Grammarly. It has been used by clowns and in satirical theater since the 16th century. In Athens, Greece, a police officer can strip a person of their driver's license if the officer believes the individual has not bathed or is even simply poorly dressed. In South Carolina in the United States, the maximum penalty for a first offense of domestic abuse is 30 days in jail, while the maximum sentence for abusing a dog is 5 years. When Hershey Park built its new carousel in 1912, the person in charge of painting the attraction's sign misspelled the word by adding an extra letter instead of repainting it. The park decided to operate the ride under that title for 32 years. The legendary Bruce Lee was reportedly so fast and precise that he could toss a single grain of rice into the air and catch it with a pair of chopsticks before it hit the ground. Thurville, a village in Normandy, is the only village in all of France that has not lost a single resident in the last 5 wars in which the nation has been involved, including the First and Second World Wars. Every soldier who took part in them returned home. To prove that using beautiful women in his music videos was not the only thing making his music popular, Indian singer Daler Mehndi created a video using only his own image. It became a massive success in India and later turned into a viral meme. Some species of termites possess a very unusual defense mechanism. When they sense a threat to their colony, certain individuals can release a sticky and toxic substance from their bodies to help stop predators and protect the rest of the group, even at the cost of their own lives. First introduced in Green Lantern Volume 2, Issue 188 in 1986, Dikartsi is a biosentient mathematical equation that is a genuine member of a group of superheroes, the Green Lanterns. In March of 2016, Barack Obama became the first president in 88 years to officially visit the country of Cuba. The last president to do so was Calvin Coolidge in 1928. In 2013, an April Fool's Day prank took a bad turn when 2 Florida radio hosts told listeners that their faucets were dispensing dihydrogen monoxide. The joke caused panic, leading to the hosts being suspended and ordered to pay a fine. Dihydrogen monoxide is simply another way of saying water. In 1994, Tom Berenger opened a restaurant on New York City's Upper East Side called Twins, which employed 29 pairs of identical twins. On the night of December 13, 1977, Air India Flight 216 crashed shortly after takeoff in Evansville, Indiana, killing everyone except one member of the University of Evansville basketball team. The only surviving team member was not actually on the plane. However, 2 weeks after the tragic accident, he lost his life after being struck by a drunk driver. A study carried out in the late 1960s revealed that people experienced an effect similar to marijuana from catnip, but the results were discarded when researchers discovered that the plants had accidentally been switched with real marijuana. Data collected in 2013 by the Venezuelan Prison Observatory revealed that nearly 48,000 people were incarcerated in the country's prisons, which were built to hold a maximum of only 16,500. That is almost 3 times the number the prisons can safely hold. In October 2012, the Haida Salmon Restoration Corporation, in partnership with Russ George, an American businessman, dumped 100 tons of iron sulfate into the Pacific Ocean off the coast of British Columbia, Canada. They did this in order to promote the growth of plankton capable of absorbing carbon dioxide from the air. It has been documented that when young male dolphins become frustrated, they sometimes attack and kill other porpoises, often in groups. Marine researchers have found porpoise bodies with severe internal injuries, broken ribs, and impact marks consistent with attacks from bottlenose dolphins. This behavior does not appear to be related to feeding, but rather to social aggression or dominance practice. Similar cases have also been observed among dolphins themselves, especially among young males that form alliances and compete for territory or access to females. Most cultures see sticking out the tongue as a sign of disrespect, but it is the complete opposite in Tibet, where sticking out your tongue at someone is considered good manners. In Denmark, it is legal to burn or desecrate the national flag, but it is illegal to burn or desecrate the flags of foreign countries, the United Nations, or the Council of Europe, because doing so would be seen as a threat. The Roman soldier Scipio Africanus managed to survive his country's defeats at Trasimene, Cannae, and Ticino. However, he later led the Roman army as a general and defeated Hannibal, one of the greatest military commanders in history. On March 28, 2013, inmates at a Venezuelan prison on Margarita Island opened a nightclub inside the prison itself. Friends and family members of the incarcerated attended the opening, which featured professional lights, sound systems, and even dancers. A survey conducted in the United States in 1997 revealed that 12% of Americans believe Joan of Arc was the wife of Noah, the biblical figure who had an ark. Both figures reportedly received messages from God, but even if both stories were 100% accurate, the pair did not even live during the same era of history. The worship of Sapona, the god of smallpox, was banned in Nigeria after reports spread that a sect was deliberately spreading the disease in order to increase its power. The law in Las Vegas states that it is illegal for someone to pawn their dentures because they are considered a prescribed medical device. There are around 25,000 more genes in a bowl of cornflakes than in the entire human body. Meanwhile, there are actually only 17 more genes in a human being than in the body of an earthworm. Toward the end of 1803, several people in the Hammersmith area of London, England, began reporting sightings of a ghost in the neighborhood. On January 3, 1804, a bricklayer named Thomas Millwood was dressed entirely in white work clothes and walking through the town when he encountered an armed patrol. One member of the patrol mistook Millwood for the ghost and shot him in the face, killing him. While building the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, the fastest manned aircraft in the world and a nearly undetectable aircraft during the height of the Cold War, the Central Intelligence Agency used fake corporations to obtain titanium from Russia. Basically, the Soviets were supplying the metal used in the planes that were spying on them. The late Hugh Hefner, founder of Playboy and therefore the Playboy Bunny, had a real species of rabbit named after him. The species is an endangered marsh rabbit called Sylvilagus palustris hefneri, and it lives in the southeastern United States. The longest civil war in the history of Earth is still being fought. Nicknamed the Karen Conflict, the war began in 1949 in Karen State, Burma, now Karen State, Myanmar, and continues today with Karen nationalists fighting Myanmar's armed forces for independence. Storm babies are a real phenomenon in which barometric pressure building during a storm causes a pregnant mother to go into spontaneous labor. Although there is still scientific debate about how much weather truly influences labor, many hospitals have reported unexpected increases in births during severe storms and hurricanes. Some theories suggest that sudden changes in atmospheric pressure may affect the breaking of the water in women who are already close to giving birth. Medical staff from different regions have even reported that maternity wards often fill up just before or during intense storms. Former United States President Harry S. Truman visited Disneyland in 1957. He was offered a ride on Dumbo the Flying Elephant, but he politely declined. Having been a Democrat throughout his political career, Truman did not want to be seen riding an elephant, which is the symbol of the Republican Party. If you accidentally run over an animal with your car in the state of West Virginia, the law states that you are legally allowed to claim it as your own, take it home, and eat it. The measure was created to prevent large amounts of roadkill from going to waste on the state's rural highways. In some cases, authorities even require the accident to first be reported to the police or wildlife officers before allowing the person to remove the animal, especially when it involves deer or other protected species. Named after Count Dracula and found in the saliva of vampire bats, draculin is the glycoprotein that acts as an anticoagulant to help the creatures feed. Administered through the bat's bite, it prevents blood from clotting so the creatures can drink more quickly. Out of the 30 fastest 100-meter sprint races in Olympic history, only 9 were free of doping violations, and all of them belong to Usain Bolt. The Jamaican athlete dominated sprinting events for more than a decade and set world records that still stand in the 100 and 200 meters. His combination of height, power, and acceleration broke many traditional assumptions in track and field, because elite sprinters were usually shorter. In addition to his historic performances, Bolt became one of the most recognizable sports figures on the planet thanks to his charismatic personality and iconic celebrations. After Thomas Edison's declining health forced him to use a wheelchair, the inventor's close friend and business magnate Henry Ford brought an extra wheelchair to his property so the two could race each other. On his deathbed, Edison's final breath was captured in a glass test tube by his son Charles, and later sealed with paraffin wax. Charles gave it to Henry Ford because the younger Edison was well aware of how close the two men were. It is currently on display at the Henry Ford Museum outside Detroit, Michigan. During breeding season, the hummingbird will build its nest near the nest of a hawk because the larger birds will instinctively protect them from animals that feed on hummingbird eggs. The tiny hummingbirds take advantage of the presence of territorial predators to keep snakes, crows, and other birds away from their nests. In addition, their nests are usually tiny and made with moss, plant fibers, and spiderwebs, allowing them to blend into tree branches with surprising ease. Between 1946 and 1958, the United States detonated at least 23 nuclear bombs at 7 test sites on or near Bikini Atoll, part of the Marshall Islands. Because of this, in 1987, Bikini Atoll adopted a new flag that resembles the United States flag but with 5 black stars instead of white stripes. 3 of the stars represent 3 islands that were erased by the bombs, while the other 2 represent the 2 islands where Bikini natives now live, specifically Kili Island and Egypt Island. The flag is intended to represent a great debt that Bikini Atoll believes the United States still owes them. Crows in Japan have mastered a technique for cracking nuts by dropping them onto the street and collecting them after passing cars run them over. Some even wait beside pedestrian traffic lights and take advantage of the red light to safely retrieve the food. Scientists consider crows to be among the smartest birds on the planet, capable of recognizing human faces, using tools, and remembering solutions to problems for years. In several Japanese cities, they have also become famous for opening garbage bags and adapting incredibly well to urban life. For several decades, villagers living in central China consumed dinosaur bones excavated from the surrounding region, using them in soups and as medicine because they believed they were the bones of magical dragons. Female kangaroos can delay the gestation of a baby inside them if they believe environmental factors around them may pose a risk to the newborn's survival. They can also determine the baby's gender while carrying it. This process, known as embryonic diapause, allows them to temporarily pause the embryo's development until there is enough food or better conditions for raising the joey. In addition, a female can feed multiple joeys of different ages at the same time, producing different types of milk specifically adapted for each one. Before his execution by Libya's National Transitional Council on October 20, 2011, deposed leader Muammar Gaddafi was actually the richest person on Earth. Taking into account his global corporate investments, multiple bank accounts, and other assets, Gaddafi was worth more than $200 billion. In 1926, Poland sent the United States a birthday card containing more than 5 million signatures. The enormous tribute was created to celebrate the anniversary of American independence, and as a symbol of friendship between the two nations. Because of the massive number of collected signatures, the project ended up filling dozens of volumes and pages signed by students, workers, and citizens from different Polish regions. Many of those signatures are still preserved in libraries and historical archives as one of the largest greeting cards ever created. During a press conference in June of 1943, United States Congressman Andrew J. May announced that American submarines were surviving Japanese attacks in enemy waters because the depth charges being used were set to explode at too shallow a depth. Due to May's comments, Japan made adjustments, and around 800 American servicemen lost their lives. After being captured on March 18, 1915, a suspected 25-year-old member of the Mexican Revolution named Venceslao Moguel, better known as El Fusilado, was shot 9 times by a firing squad. Somehow, he managed to survive and lived another 60 years. The largest beaver dam ever discovered is located in Wood Buffalo National Park in northern Alberta, Canada. Experts believe several generations of beavers have been working on it since the 1970s. This dam is more than 2,798 feet long, so massive that it can be seen from space. The last letter written by George Harrison was addressed to actor Mike Myers, telling him how much he enjoyed the movie Austin Powers. Released in 1997 to commemorate Apple's 20th anniversary, the 20th Anniversary Mac was a limited edition computer marketed toward executives. The futuristic-looking Mac cost around $7,500 and was hand-delivered in a limousine by an Apple employee dressed in a tuxedo. In Australia, McDonald's has earned the nickname Macca's. The name became so popular that in 2013 it was officially added to signs and everything else during a special company campaign. In Australian English, it is very common to shorten words and add informal endings to them, which is why expressions like brekkie for breakfast and barbie for barbecue are part of everyday speech. The nickname Macca's became so widely used that it even appears in some modern Australian dictionaries. Artist Vincent van Gogh created many of his most famous paintings between May of 1889 and May of 1890, while voluntarily admitted as a patient at the St. Paul Mental Asylum in Saint-Clémy-de-Provence, France. The only human being buried on the moon is planetary scientist Eugene Shoemaker, who died in 1997. On January 6, 1998, NASA's lunar prospector headed toward the moon's south pole in search of ice, while carrying 1 ounce of Shoemaker's ashes. Then, on July 1, 1999, the spacecraft intentionally crashed into the surface of the moon, making Shoemaker the first burial beyond Earth. Many Mayflower pilgrims were fleeing persecution in England, but some also left because they feared the Dutch Republic, which they believed was influencing their children. Between 1979 and 1982, an average of 8,179 toothpick-related injuries were reported each year in the United States alone. In addition to that, at least 3 people lost their lives after swallowing the small wooden pieces. Today, around 9,000 people end up in American hospitals after choking on toothpicks. Most of them are between 5 and 14 years old. Teachers in Luxembourg are the highest paid in the world, with a starting salary of just under 99,000 United States dollars and the ability to earn up to $138,000 per year. On April 19, 1951, less than 6 years after witnessing atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki from a neighboring Japanese city, 20-year-old Shigeki Tanaka traveled to the United States, the country responsible for the explosion, and won the Boston Marathon. We are currently living closer to the year in which The Jetsons was set, which was 2062, than to when the show first aired in 1962. A 1962 Looney Tunes cartoon called Mexican Borders featured Slowpoke, a cousin of Speedy Gonzales, and implied that the much slower mouse had a habit of using marijuana. George R.R. Martin, the author of the books on which HBO's Game of Thrones is based, appeared in the unaired pilot as a nobleman wearing a giant hat. However, when the scenes were reshot, Martin did not reprise the role. The sting of the tarantula hawk wasp is considered one of the most painful of any insect. Although the pain lasts only about 3 minutes, experts advise that if you are stung, the best thing to do is lie down and start screaming. Few people, if any, can remain coordinated after being stung, and you will most likely end up hurting yourself even more while trying to get help or find a way to reduce the agony. According to Dr. Martin Benchik of Nottingham Trent University, when bees collide with one another, they emit a vibration that sounds like a scream. And scientists believe this sound is the result of the bees becoming frightened. In 1781, while living abroad as the United States ambassador to France, Benjamin Franklin wrote an essay titled A Letter to a Royal Academy About Farting, better known as Fart Proudly. The essay was Franklin's way of expressing his belief that several academic societies in Europe were pretentious. There is actually a magnetic bone inside your head right now. It is called the ethmoid bone and is located at the top of the nose, where many people believe the third eye is located. As a magnetic bone, the ethmoid helps with the sense of direction. The full name of legendary composer Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart is an anagram of a famous German waltz god. He was born in what is now Austria, but his father Leopold was originally from Augsburg, Germany, which makes the anagram strangely accurate. Male platypuses are one of the few living mammals that are venomous, and apparently, the pain is unbearable. During mating season, they secrete venom through spurs located on their hind legs. Painkillers are useless, and the side effects are long-lasting, although the venom is not lethal to humans. A survey conducted among 23,000 people in 22 countries revealed that around 20% of the world's population believes that extraterrestrials are living among us, walking around disguised as normal people. In India and China, that number rises to as much as 40%. On July 31, 1914, in preparation for what would become World War I, the Tsar of Russia banned the sale of alcohol. The measure ended up devastating the state budget because the Russian government earned more than one-third of its revenue from alcohol sales. Krusty the Clown from The Simpsons was originally supposed to be Homer Simpson in disguise, because the joke was that Bart hated Homer but loved Krusty. Steven Spielberg is considered one of the most influential figures in film history, and his name has been mentioned dozens of times in acceptance speeches during the Academy Awards. Over the years, actors, directors, and producers have publicly acknowledged the enormous influence that his movies and support have had on the industry. Released on September 5, 2000, Memento, the neo-noir psychological thriller by Christopher Nolan, has been praised by several medical experts in the field of neurology, who stated that the fictional movie is one of the most accurate portrayals of anterograde amnesia in cinematic history. Sliced bread was first sold in Davenport, Iowa, United States, in 1928 by Otto Frederick Rohwedder. He invented the world's first single-loaf bread slicing machine in 1912. He advertised his new and convenient bakery item as the greatest forward step in the baking industry since bread wrapping. On the Richter scale, which is used to measure the strength of earthquakes, the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs approximately 66 million years ago is estimated to have reached level 13. Anything reaching a 15 on the Richter scale would completely destroy Earth. In 2007, 20th Century Fox angered the United States Mint when it used real currency for a publicity stunt for its movie Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Around 40,000 California state quarters were enhanced with an image of the Silver Surfer and a website address before being put into circulation. This caused the Mint to publicly point out that advertising on currency is illegal. The last time every living human being was on Earth at the same time was on November 2, 2000. Since then, the International Space Station has been continuously occupied. Astronauts and cosmonauts from different countries have lived there for more than 2 decades, conducting experiments related to medicine, biology, physics, and space technology. The station travels around Earth at a speed of nearly 17,400 miles per hour, allowing it to complete approximately 16 trips around the planet every day and constantly witness sunrises and sunsets. During the American Civil War, diseases claimed nearly twice as many lives as actual combat. One of the biggest problems among soldiers was severe diarrhea. It became such a common issue that an unwritten code developed stating that no one should shoot or kill an enemy soldier who was in the process of answering nature's call. Pattie Boyd, who was the wife of the late Beatles member George Harrison and the inspiration for his song Something, is also the inspiration behind Eric Clapton's hit Layla, in which he confesses being in love with his friend's wife. In November of 1977, disappointed with his rank within the Central Intelligence Agency, William Campilis stole a manual for a top-secret satellite, resigned, and then sold it to the Soviets for $3,000. Believing his former bosses would be impressed with him, he confessed to the CIA and requested to become a double agent. The CIA refused and immediately arrested him for espionage. He served 18 years in a federal prison. Dwayne Johnson, also known as The Rock, travels to all of his movie sets with a private gym containing more than 40,000 pounds of equipment that requires more than 100 people to assemble. Scientists studying chimpanzees at a sanctuary in Zambia noticed that the primates recognized their own fashion trends. In one case, several of them began placing pieces of grass in their ears for no apparent reason other than wanting to feel included in the group. American novelist Nathaniel Hawthorne added the letter W to his last name in order to keep secret his connection to his great-great-grandfather, John Hathorne. John Hathorne was the only judge who never regretted his actions during the Salem witch trials. Scaphism was an ancient form of punishment described in historical accounts and considered extremely cruel. According to the stories, the victim was forced to consume large amounts of milk and honey before being placed between two boats or hollow logs. More honey was then spread over the body to attract insects and other animals, leaving the person exposed for long periods under extremely harsh conditions. On May 18, 1980, American photographer Robert Landsberg was documenting the eruption of Mount St. Helens when he suddenly realized he would not be able to outrun the ash cloud heading toward him. Wanting to preserve what he had recorded, Landsberg rewound the film, placed everything inside its proper case, and then laid his body over it to protect it. His body was found 17 days later, but his work survived and provided key details to geologists studying the eruption. In the classic 1972 film The Godfather, the word mafia is never spoken because of threats made by the real-life mafia. Producer Albert Ruddy ultimately received approval to make the movie from mob boss Joseph Colombo after the filmmaker and Paramount Pictures agreed to remove every instance of the word mafia from the script and donate the movie premiere profits to the construction fund of the Italian-American Civil Rights League Hospital. During World War II, the fuel used in the engines of United States Navy torpedoes was a 180-proof grain alcohol that officers often stole to make torpedo juice. The combination of the fuel and pineapple juice led naval authorities to begin mixing poisonous substances into the fuel simply to prevent it from being consumed, but sailors still kept finding clever ways to separate the alcohol from the poison. The 4F classification is now given to any man or woman considered unfit for service in the United States Armed Forces. The term was coined during the American Civil War, when it literally meant that the individual did not have 4 front teeth to tear open gunpowder packages. Naturally, there were several cases in which capable young men removed their teeth to avoid serving. Famous author Ernest Hemingway survived a series of misfortunes, including malaria, skin cancer, anthrax, hepatitis, dysentery, a ruptured kidney, a ruptured liver, a ruptured spleen, pneumonia, a crushed vertebra, a fractured skull, and not only all of that, but also 2 plane crashes. On January 9, 1386, after being found guilty of murdering a child in a French court, a sow was executed by hanging. The pig had been formally arrested after being discovered with the dead child, served time in a human jail for the crime, and received the death sentence from a judge. In 1997, Iceland Foods Limited launched a product line called Crazy Vegetables in an attempt to encourage children to eat healthier vegetables. The lineup included chocolate-flavored carrots, baked bean-flavored peas, cheese and onion-flavored cauliflower, and pizza-flavored sweet corn. Although he had not smoked before, actor James Franco began smoking 2 packs of cigarettes a day to prepare for his role as James Dean in the 2001 television biopic James Dean. Franco also learned how to ride a motorcycle, play guitar, and even isolated himself from friends and family to get into the proper mindset for the role. It appeared to pay off, since he ended up winning a Golden Globe for the performance. Unlike regular tires, the tires used by NASCAR teams are filled with nitrogen instead of regular air. This is because nitrogen has a more consistent contraction and expansion rate, giving the car better traction and handling than if the tires were filled only with air. Because they possess hollow quills, all porcupines have natural buoyancy. This allows them to stay afloat on the surface of the water with relative ease, and even cross rivers and lakes when they need to travel in search of food or shelter. Although many people imagine porcupines as slow and clumsy animals, some are surprisingly good climbers and spend much of their time in trees. Their quills also function as a passive defense because they detach easily upon contact and can cause painful injuries to potential predators. According to one report, Doctors' poor handwriting has been linked to more than 7,000 deaths and 1.5 million injuries every year in the United States alone. For decades, difficult-to-read prescriptions caused dosage errors, incorrect medications, and confusion in hospitals and pharmacies. Because of these problems, many healthcare systems began replacing handwritten prescriptions with digital records and electronic prescriptions. Some medical schools even faced criticism for prioritizing writing speed during long work shifts. It is said that around 40% of the meteorites that strike Earth originate from a single source, the asteroid Hebe, an asteroid in the main belt that was discovered on July 1, 1847. The oldest known Yo Mama joke is actually 3,500 years old. It was written on a tablet by a student in ancient Babylon. The text was discovered among ancient cuneiform inscriptions carved into clay, one of the oldest known writing methods. Many tablets from that era contained school exercises, jokes, sayings, and everyday complaints, which has revealed that even thousands of years ago, people were still making jokes about family topics, food, teachers, and embarrassing situations. The first recorded use of the phrase trick or treat was in 1927 in Blackie, Alberta. A local newspaper reported that pranksters were going door to door demanding a treat, or else they would play a trick on homeowners. There is a tradition among Russian cosmonauts in which, just before boarding the transfer bus that will take them to the space shuttle, they urinate on the bus's rear right tire. Women are allowed to skip the ritual, although many still participate by carrying their urine in a jar or vial. Also known as wildebeests, these animals learn to walk literally minutes after being born and can keep up with their mother and therefore the herd within just a few days. Merida, the independent princess character from the animated movie Brave, is the only Disney princess who neither sings in her movie nor has a love interest. In 2013, Sony released a completely waterproof MP3 player. To demonstrate the underwater capabilities of the new devices, each one was sold fully submerged inside a bottle of water. Around 35% of female prisoners in Saudi Arabia remain in prison because no male relative will come pick them up. The longest poem ever written is the Mahabharata, a text used to teach the principles of Hinduism. It contains around 1.8 million words in 74,000 verses. If you tried to recite it continuously without breaks, it would take you 2 weeks to complete it. In July 2016, the Radford Army Ammunition Plant, a highly classified military explosives factory in Virginia, had to take extra precautions after people were caught sneaking into the facility while playing Pokemon Go on their phones. Rumors spread that there was a Charizard on the property, when, of course, there was not. The hides from around 22 cows are used to make enough footballs for the Super Bowl, and more than 3,000 for a regular NFL season. Studies conducted in 2006 revealed that the Amazon River, which today flows from west to east, used to flow in the opposite direction in prehistoric times, and, for a very brief period, flowed in both directions. Scientists believe that enormous geological changes, especially the uplift of the Andes Mountains, gradually altered the natural direction of the water millions of years ago. Before that, much of the Amazon region was connected to far more extensive wetland systems and inland seas. This change helped shape one of the most biodiverse ecosystems on the planet and completely transformed the geography of South America. Actor Joaquin Phoenix's last name used to be Bottom. However, after escaping the Children of God cult in Huntington Beach, California, his family changed all of their last names to Phoenix in order to symbolize rising from the ashes. In 2011, 71-year-old retired fisherman João Pereira de Souza rescued a South American penguin after the animal became stranded on a beach near his home on an island off the coast of Rio de Janeiro. Since then, every year, the penguin named Dindim travels thousands of miles to spend several months with the elderly man before returning to its colony once again. The average 10-hour flight of a Boeing 747 consumes up to 39,600 gallons of fuel. On average, the aircraft requires about 1 gallon every second that it remains in the air. Despite that enormous consumption, the 747 was considered for decades one of the most efficient aircraft for transporting large numbers of passengers and cargo across long distances. Its massive size allowed cities on different continents to be connected without frequent layovers, completely changing the way millions of people traveled around the world. In the summer of 2006, the Walt Disney Company quietly ended its cross-promotion agreement with McDonald's in an effort to distance itself from the fast food giant's alleged contributions to the childhood obesity epidemic affecting the United States. A study from 2005 revealed that, when it comes to heavier women, men feel more attracted to them when they are hungry than when they have recently eaten. In 1949, the town of Mole Hill, West Virginia, officially changed its name to Mountain, simply for the humor of turning a molehill into a mountain. It is actually possible to walk from one end of the United States to the other on a single hiking trail. The American Discovery Trail is 6,800 miles long and crosses the country coast to coast, from Cape Henlopen, Delaware to Limantour Beach, California. According to legendary Canadian actor William Shatner, he and his Star Trek co-star DeForest Kelley did not speak to each other for nearly 2 years after Shatner laughed at Kelly's story about his chihuahua named Emily, who ran headfirst into a sprinkler and died suddenly. The thick bark and deep cracks of the oldest sequoias create a protective barrier around the tree, ultimately making it fireproof. Scatomancy is a practice that has existed for thousands of years, in which a person's fortune is predicted by examining their feces. Ancient cultures used different similar methods of divination involving bodily fluids, animal remains, and other elements considered signs of fate or spiritual messages. Although today the practice is mostly seen as a historical or folkloric curiosity, stool analysis did end up gaining real importance in modern medicine. Today, fecal samples can detect infections, parasites, digestive problems, and even certain types of cancer relatively early. Research conducted in Great Britain revealed that the average driver spends more than 2 days each year simply waiting for a red light to turn green. In heavily congested cities such as London, some drivers may pass through hundreds of traffic lights every week, especially during rush hour. Urban mobility studies have also found that a large portion of unnecessary fuel consumption occurs while vehicles remain stopped at crowded intersections. Because of this, several European cities have begun implementing intelligent traffic lights capable of adjusting their timing in real time based on traffic flow. Before receiving the title Friends, the hit sitcom had several working titles, including Across the Hall and Insomnia Cafe. Even though nuclear bombs were dropped on them, the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are no longer radioactive because the explosions occurred high in the air, meaning the radioactive fireball did not touch the ground and therefore reduced the amount of radioactive fallout created. For the movie Forrest Gump, Tom Hanks was originally supposed to use his natural accent. However, after Michael Connor Humphreys, the child actor who portrayed the younger version of Gump in the film, had trouble adapting his voice to the older actor's accent, Hanks decided to adapt his own accent to match the Mississippi-born child instead. A duel involving 3 opponents instead of the standard 2 involved in most duels is actually called a truel. In such a fight, each participant must attempt to kill the other 2. In 1865, the American $20 bill featured a painting of the baptism of the legendary Native American woman, Pocahontas. She is shown kneeling before a priest with other Native Americans on one side and colonists on the other. Mel Gibson, 2-time Academy Award winner, was born with a rare birth defect that affects 1 out of every 600 people, known as a horseshoe kidney. Both kidneys fuse together before birth, forming a U-shape or horseshoe shape. In 1925, a skilled con artist named Victor Lustig successfully sold the Eiffel Tower to a scrap metal buyer, accepting a large cash bribe while pretending to be a corrupt member of the French government. When the buyer went to claim the Paris monument, he discovered he had been scammed and that Lustig had fled to Austria. Valeria Messalina, the third wife of Roman Emperor Claudius, supposedly enjoyed secretly working as a prostitute. She once had a contest with another local woman to see who could sleep with more men in one night. The Empress won. In 2011, a Florida high school principal named George Kenny was suspended after 16-year-old Wesley McKinley passed away 1 day after participating in a hypnosis session led by the principal. The case generated major controversy and raised questions about the use of such practices in school environments. The soft drink giant Coca-Cola once launched a sales campaign called H2NO. It included a website that taught bartenders how to convince customers to buy their products instead of asking for free water. The goal was to make consumers say no to H2O. John Stonehouse, a member of the British Parliament, attempted to fake his own death, only to be discovered in Australia after being mistaken for another famous missing person. Several beauty salons in the United Kingdom have designated a silent chair in their establishments. It is a way for antisocial people to get their hair cut or dyed without engaging in small talk. Cheating on final exams is frowned upon in every country. But in Bangladesh, students older than 15 who are caught cheating can be sentenced to time in jail. Although millions of people around the world claim to have it, there is actually no scientific proof that adult humans possess photographic memory. Researchers have documented very rare cases of eidetic memory, an ability more common in some children that allows them to remember images in great detail for a short period of time. However, human memory normally reconstructs information by blending memories, emotions, and incomplete details, which is why even people with extraordinary memories can make mistakes or alter certain recollections over time. Actor Tom Cruise separated from each of his three ex-wives, Mimi Rogers, Nicole Kidman, and Katie Holmes, when each woman was 33 years old. In the faith of Scientology, the number 33 is considered the master and symbolizes altruism, true love, and increased positive energy. The sound of a Ferrari engine is one of the car's most distinctive features, and that sound is actually created by using the third and sixth harmonics in the engine's air intake. Basically, they are musically engineered to sound incredible, very much like a flute or an organ. When Tom Scholz recorded his band Boston's debut album, More Than a Feeling, he did it in his own basement, but delivered the tracks to the studio as though they had been professionally recorded there. The album has sold more than 17 million copies to date. According to the Aluminum Association, nearly 75% of all aluminum ever produced in history is still in use today. This is due to the reuse of the metal and ongoing recycling efforts.
If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like it and share it with your friends. Subscribe so you don't miss more interesting content. Leave your comments and click on any of these videos. See you next time.